All right. So let's just jump right into the interview. So, how did you get started in football? I mean, was it something that your parents suggested to you at a young age, or was it something that you took upon yourself to get interested in?
I don't think my parents necessarily encouraged it uh early on in my life. I always went to like smaller schools growing up, and the school I went to in middle school was like a private school in Indianapolis, and I mean the attendance was the number of kids in the school. I mean, you couldn't really justify having football as a sport. I remember. I kind of knew the principal a little bit. His name was Mr. Weber, and um, he promised. This was like back when the Colts had Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy and all them. He was like, "If the Colts win the Super Bowl, I promise, like we'll have a football team." And I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna hold you to that." And they actually won the Super Bowl, but I mean, he never he never followed through on the promise. But it is what it is. Um, but yeah, I mean, I never really played football up until, I mean, I played 1 year in like fifth or sixth grade. It was just like, um, I guess Pop Warner type football. It wasn't like associated with my school. And then I just like hated it. It was just such a grind, and like I just wasn't about it. And then really didn't play football again until my freshman year of high school. And at that point, I went to a high school that kind of had a team, obviously, and was able to do that.
And then at what point did you see yourself continuing football after high school? Because a lot of kids just consider their athletic career over once they hit high school.
Yeah. So I mean, I had just kind of done football in high school, and thankfully, I mean, we had a pretty good program, and the coaches were very encouraging of me and my development, like in the weight room, outside of just on the field. So that really helped me um, kind of progress in football and get to a point where I was getting, looks from colleges and universities, and that really kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of, oh wow, you can do this at the next level, and you can get your school paid for at the same time. So that was very appealing to me.
And then you can go Division 1 and then get to the NFL after that. Was that ever a
Yeah.
conversation that your parents were having with you, or was that more of like a coaching staff conversation that you have the potential to play at the next level?
I think it was more so like the coaching staff. I mean, my parents were always encouraging of uh, me participating in athletics and that sort of thing. And, they saw my love and I guess dedication to the game, and in all the sports I did, but they always encouraged me to be successful in the classroom as well. So it was never like, I mean, it was always like go full bore for athletics, but also like you have to get an education as well. So yeah, that was always kind of how they approached it. But it was definitely also encouraged from my coaches and stuff. Like they could definitely see the talent and the fact that I could play at the next level. But coming out of high school, it was never, oh, I'm going to go to the NFL. It was more so like near future, like I'm trying to get to college and play Division 1. So
Do you think Kentucky prepared you for the NFL?
I think so. Yeah. So coming out of high school, I really wasn't like a big recruit. I want to say I was like a 2 or 3 star recruit, which, that's a whole thing in itself, like the recruiting system and ranking, especially when I was coming out, it was still kind of back in the times when you had to like make your own highlight on the computer and then burn a bunch of CDs and send them out. It was like just um, getting to that point where you know, I think huddle was becoming a thing and you could have everything like online, but it was still kind of in the era where you had to burn CDs and stuff. But so I wasn't like a big recruiter or anything. I think Kentucky was really my only Division One SEC offer, and then outside of that, it was mainly MAC schools. I remember pretty distinctly that IU, where my brother was actually going and playing on the team, decided not to offer me, and so I took that kind of personally, but was pretty happy once I got the offer from University of Kentucky.
And then at what point did you think I'm going to forego looking for for mechanical engineering jobs and I'm going to pursue this NFL career?
I think that was kind of, I mean, initially when I got to the University of Kentucky, it wasn't about like I'm gonna I'm gonna go to the NFL. It was like, okay, I'm a redshirt freshman. How do I get on the field? And so it was very methodical. I think that didn't really enter my mind until, I mean, it's always like in the back of your mind as like a possibility and like as a hope and a dream, but I don't think that really became like the thing I worked towards exclusively until probably my junior year, where I was like, oh, okay, this could be a reality. Let's start focusing more and progressing more on this aspect.
So then you get to the NFL and you're kind of being traded through a couple different teams. At what point did you bring in the modeling aspect of it?
Yeah, so modeling started, I think in 2019 was the first year. So I met girlfriend, my my girlfriend in 2018, and she had hooked me up with the agency that represents me now, IMG. And so we didn't end up signing, I did not end up signing with IMG until like the late summer, like July of 2019. And, you know, football camps start in like late July and August. So I only had the opportunity to do one job before I was kind of like in football mode. So,
And during that time when you were preparing to figure out how to do both, what was the conversation with your coaches and your teammates like? I mean, did they realize this was a part of what you were doing now, or were they just thinking of you as John the football player?
I didn't really go around, um, bragging that I was a model, just because there is kind of, for the position I was in with teams, it was kind of like, I felt it was almost looked down upon, where it was like, they see that you're doing stuff outside of football and like you're not exactly the star on the team. So they could kind of question your commitment to the team and organization. So it wasn't something I like started conversations off with. If somebody asked me about it, I would, talk about it, but it wasn't something I would go into a conversation with like a coach or somebody else about.
So how were they talking to you when they did realize that this was a big part of what you were doing now and where your income stream was?
Oh yeah, I mean, coaches definitely find it funny, especially um, the offensive line coaches, because you don't exactly look at an offensive lineman and think, oh yeah, he's looks good enough on camera to be a model, So I most of them thought it was funny and joked about it.
I mean, that was a very serious thing though. How did that make you feel that they were kind of joking about this part of you that you enjoy doing?
I mean, it wasn't like making fun of me. It was all in like good fun kind of jokes, like just ribbing me and, giving me a hard time about it, but um, I didn't mind it. It was more so a relief that they thought it was funny slash cool rather than like, holding it against me. But yeah, it was.
So, what is a day in the life like for you? You can either go through a day in the life of a football player or a day in the life of working through these modeling gigs.
Um, so I mean, it's kind of hard to separate the two because I am doing both. So it's a it's kind of it really just depends what, is on the docket for the day. I mean, I prioritize obviously staying in shape and being fit. So that's always a component of my day. And I typically schedule around that somewhat. And, if we're in Hoboken, New Jersey, and a lot of the casting stuff is in like the city, New York City or Brooklyn. So if I have like a go see or a casting, I'll can alter my workout plans around that. Obviously, this is all taking place in like the off season. So really my responsibilities are just working out and then doing modeling stuff. So like for example, I work out 5 times a week, usually in the morning, but on Friday I have a casting call with Ralph Lauren. So I'm gonna like work out in the afternoon probably. So
I love how casually you mentioned that. You're like, I have a casting call with Ralph Lauren. I gotta go. I have
I
to
know.
reschedule my day. That's so
Yeah,
cool,
so
though.
so it's definitely a fun opportunity to be able to work with these brands that I grew up and still wear. Um, and it's pretty fun.
So, what is you were talking about working out, but let's kind of flip the conversation and talk about nutrition because
Hmm.
there's a huge caloric intake that it takes to maintain a Division 1 football lineman body physique.
Hmm.
Has that shifted now that you're modeling and how you're seen is so much less about fending off the defense as opposed to looking
Hmm.
good in whatever clothes you're wearing?
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely say my caloric intake goes down compared to like during the season, just because the demand on the body is a little less. And I mean, obviously, I want to look how I feel I should look in clothes. So there definitely is a kind of give and take with caloric intake. So where I'm trying to still provide my body with the nutrients it needs to be physically fit and strong, but also, look good.
Is that a challenge? And do you have anyone monitoring that, or is that kind of taken upon yourself?
I mean, it definitely is a challenge. I think the best way to kind of manage it though is just getting in some sort of a routine where um, I mean, my life obviously is very based around adhering to routines and kind of a schedule. Um, so just kind of, yeah, going through that. And it's based off of just kind of me having monitored how I respond to, different levels of intake over the years and kind of what works best with my body. So I've consulted people in the past and they've helped me kind of get a base of knowledge, and then I've just kind of fine-tuned that over the years in terms of like what I find works best for my body and in these different seasons of the year.
Do
So
you meal prep, or is everything made like in the moment?
I used to meal prep. I don't now. It's more so I just make things as I go. Yeah.
And then at what point did IMG kind of put you in the what women's clothing would consider plus size category? I mean, was that something, a conversation that you knew going in, that these were the type of
Oh
shoes
yeah.
that they were going to have you modeling?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, right off the bat, it was never like, I mean, just due to my size, there was no like gray area in terms of like, you're not going to be a big and tall model, or like a brawn model is what they call it in the industry. Um, it's like the nice term for like big and tall. So there was never really any gray area on either side in terms of what I was going to be doing, and like that I was a part of this. I mean, it's for the guys, it's a relatively new um, market. So there, like a lot of brands are just exploring creating these different sizes for men of our stature. So it's definitely on the come up.
I know in our pre-interview you were talking about how you kind of stick out in the way that you dress, because when you think of offensive linemen, you're thinking of like Nike and size 14 shoes. So
Hmm.
does that make you kind of an anomaly right off the bat because you're working with these brands that are actually like kind of couture?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think as a model, I have a more expensive type look. So, that is always something that brands consider. Like they look at your brand and kind of how you present yourself. And I mean, it's in large part thanks to my girlfriend Adri, who runs her own styling company, AZSN Studio. Like she has always kind of helped me define my style and image and present myself a certain way, which I think is important to, how you, when you first meet somebody, the clothing you're wearing and kind of how you carry yourself all creates an impression. And I think it's very important. And I'm so lucky to have her by my side. So, um, but yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of interesting style choices that you see in a locker room, especially I mean, linemen typically, because they're, you know, larger in stature, there's not a whole lot of brands that these guys are willing to like go and do research on their own to find out like, oh, do they have like one or two pieces of clothing in my size? They have the brands that they stick to, which are typically like the athleisure brands or like a Gap or Carhartt, like work type clothing. So I would say that's typically what you see in a locker room for the most part.
And then when you're trying to figure out, well, we talk a lot on this podcast about athlete identity and how closely your motivation and your confidence are tied to your participation and therefore success in sport. But
Hmm.
you are kind of split down the middle between identifying as an NFL player and identifying as a male model. So
Hmm.
where does that lie for you?
In terms of like where my dedication lies.
Not necessarily, but like if you're introducing yourself to someone, you said that you don't off the bat introduce yourself as, "Hi, I'm John the model." So how
Hmm.
do those conversations go when someone asks you, "What are you doing?"
Uh, I'm just usually like I'm an NFL player, and I do modeling on the side. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, if someone asks, I'm going to tell them. But yeah, I mean, I have no reservation talking about what I do. It's just if I'm in a NFL facility, it's usually not something that I go about bragging about, to coaches, especially just because I don't really want them to question my dedication to the sport.
So, going off of that, how does the NFL as an institution deal with
Hmm.
athletes having other jobs outside of the field?
Yeah, I think there's kind of a split in terms of athletes and endeavors kind of outside of the sport. I think with younger guys, especially newer guys, rookies, it's really frowned upon to be doing something outside of football. Just because, like I've been saying, coaches, coaches, and people, certain people within the organization kind of see it as a lack of commitment and dedication to the organization and the team, especially if you're, uh, in an important position. I mean, just imagine Patrick Mahomes if he's uh, was a rookie on the team and was doing stuff outside in a significant way. Like, it would definitely create a bad public image of um, himself, and I guess people would call into question his commitment to the team. But now that he's making um, a significant amount of money and has kind of established himself, the story and narrative is kind of different. So I think there is a kind of difference between where you are in your career and how much leeway you get with endeavors outside of football.
And then let's talk about life after sport. So you're
Mm-hmm.
leaving the league, and what's next?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that I've thought about a lot recently. I definitely want to continue modeling, and I've recently taken an interest in like asset management, wealth management, and really think I can kind of leverage the network and relationships I've built to um, really help out people that I know and help them kind of better themselves financially.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking in the pre-interview kind of extensively about the impact of wealth management on these elite players who have multi-million dollar contracts and don't know what to do with the money.
Yeah, so it's definitely a big thing. Like, you hear stories sometimes of guys who blow through all their money. It may not be like 5 years into or after the league. It could be like 20, 30 years down the line where, just for whatever reason, the reasons vary. They kind of exhaust all their money and are out in the street, or, you know, it's just not an ideal situation. So I think there's a big need still for quality wealth and financial management in the NFL and around with sports players.
So when you see a rookie give his parents or his mom a car or a new house, are you seeing the dollar signs or are you seeing a nice gesture?
I'm seeing both, but I think there definitely is, like, it's hard to separate, you know, the gesture and obviously the dollar signs, and there's situations where that's appropriate. I'm like not a certified yet financial advisor or anything, but it obviously depends on like the amount of funds they have, because it's a nice thing to do. A fair amount of guys who make it to the league, their parents have struggled to like make ends meet for them and get them as the player to where they are today and have been their number one fans. So it's like, as a guy who finally gets that first paycheck and it's money you've never seen before, it's like it's like the least you feel like you could do to for somebody who's been there, your whole life and kind of being your cheerleader. So yeah, I can understand the sentiment for sure. And yeah, so I think it's obviously dependent on one's financial situation, but you can't just blanket statement say that it's a bad thing to do.
Yeah. So what do you think is the most important next step once you sign a multi-billion dollar contract? I mean, does it go into savings? Do you set aside like a percentage of that that you're spending and then save the rest of it? I mean, what's the kind of the right way to go about living with this large sum of money that you now have?
And I mean, it really, like I said, just depends on how much it is. If it's like you're a first round draft pick and it's $22 million, you obviously have a lot more that you can spend up front because you have guaranteed money and whatnot. But I mean, you obviously want to take a fairly large percentage of that and put it away where you can invest in your future. But for me to sit here and say that you should do it one way or another wouldn't really be appropriate, seeing as how I'm not like certified in any yet in any sort of financial capacity. So
Right.
I'd love to obviously get my licenses and stuff to where I could speak specifically about situations like that, but that is uh, happening in the future.
So at Kentucky and in the NFL, either the blanket organization or within the individual teams, was there anyone working with the athletes talking about wealth management? Or is it something that you had to kind of figure out yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like the university, especially University of Kentucky, um, did a fairly good job of exposing us to all these various, aspects of life outside of football, where it's like eventually you are going to have to get a job. Just people like bringing in a financial advisor maybe once a year to just kind of talk to the team and be like, hey, you know, this is these are the percentages of guys that make it out of college. It's like 0.3% or something like that into the NFL. And then of that percentage, this is how many make it more than the average career, which is like little less than 3.5 years. At least it was several years ago. So I feel like the university did a good job of exposing us to to those realities. And I mean, especially the competitor in me, when I was sitting in those meetings, it's like, well, I'm going to be the guy that, obviously makes it beyond those expectations. And I feel like that's kind of the guys who are contributing members like on game day or whatever. Definitely, it's hard for me to say how they think, but I feel like the competitor and most of them probably feel a similar way, where if they have aspirations to go to the NFL, they're like, oh, I'm gonna be that guy who makes it. So it's definitely, I felt like that was the good thing that my parents did, was encourage me to get an education as well, because ultimately, whether you have the drive or not, like certain realities will happen and you may end up needing an education to to do something after your career.
So I guess this leads to the question, do you see yourself using the mechanical engineering bachelor's that you have?
I don't think that I see myself necessarily using that degree. What I really loved about that um, area of study was it was very good at kind of teaching you a way to view the world and kind of take in information and process it. Um, I feel like the math aspects of engineering will really lend well to finance. I mean, math is math, so it's like, how hard can it be to pick that stuff up? But yeah, I really viewed it as kind of a way to look at the world and interpret things. And I've always really enjoyed that part of my education.
Yeah, I think that you were saying that math is math. I think that math translates really well to everything, including football. I mean, geometry is a huge part of football and the
Yeah,
angle.
yeah, just being able to, especially in the position I played at center, just being able to kind of compartmentalize things and break things down into different categories and kind of get it all in your head and just creating kind of a system out of it. That's engineering to a T is really it is. So I felt like that really translated well to football.
So when I was in college, I worked in the athletic department at a D1 institution. So I saw these athletes getting majors and degrees that were not really going to be used because
Hmm.
the hope was always to go to the professional league. So they were getting degrees in, for example, communications or sport management, which are fairly simple degrees that get you a bachelor's, but you never really end up using because it's not clearly defined what job you're going into.
Yeah.
But you're kind of different because engineering is a legitimate degree that takes a lot of time and concentration. That
Hmm.
did you ever, when you were at Kentucky, have an issue balancing the time it took to get that kind of degree and play football?
I mean, it was definitely tough. There was a time specifically where I my coach told this story, my offensive line coach, who actually just passed away not too long ago, unfortunately from cancer. But
Oh my gosh.
he would tell this story about how we played a game and then I had to do homework on the bus on the way home. So, I mean, it definitely was a very time intensive major, and I did miss out on some, you know, social aspects of college because of that. I mean, it's not like I didn't ever participate in social things. I definitely did that, but um, the engineering degree required a lot of time to where, I wasn't with my roommates playing poker on poker night some nights because, I'm in my room doing homework, trying to study for a test or something like that. So uh, it's just opportunity cost and what you want to dedicate your time to. And I chose to dedicate my time to football and then engineering.
And let's also talk about the impact of sports psychology and aspects like mindfulness on your ability to compartmentalize the mental side of the game because the offensive line is a mentally and physically taxing part of the game. So was there
Mhm.
anyone in Kentucky that was helping you with that? I mean, did you have a sports psychologist on staff?
Yeah, well, we actually had a sports psychologist on staff. His name was Ben. He was an English guy, really great guy who we're actually still friends today. Haven't talked to him in a while, but we're still buds. He kind of took me under his wing, and just kind of we had a good relationship, and just kind of talked to him every now and then, and he helped me kind of develop as a player and a person. But also when I got to University of Kentucky, I was recruited by Joker Phillips and his staff. And my redshirt year, they ended up getting fired at the end of the year. And that's when Mark Stoops, the current coach, came in and kind of revamped the program he brought in, which at the time was a new role, especially in college athletics, was a director of high performance. And his name was Eric Corum. And then he partnered with Headspace, who was at the time, a relatively new company. And they did kind of a study, I guess, on us in the football program. I'm not sure if they used other sports as well, but gave us free access to the app in return for like data and stuff. But so that was really my introduction to mindfulness and kind of how that all worked and contributed to helping someone understand themselves and kind of understand how they were um, reacting to certain situations. So I've always found that headspace to be really valuable, and have been trying to incorporate that more recently into my daily schedule.
Yeah, I mean, US soccer and the NBA both use Headspace. And I
Hmm.
did this a couple friends of mine from undergrad did this 10 days of meditation where we
Hmm.
used the app for 10 days, and we did this guided meditation script, and then we reconvened and talked about the process of mindful meditation. And it was just like,
Hmm.
I love the app. So it's fun that you
Oh
guys
yeah.
got free access to it.
Oh yeah, it's definitely I mean, it's not cheap for the for the 1 year subscription. So I've definitely enjoyed the opportunity to have free access.
So let's talk about you called it the lineman mentality, and
Hmm.
then the impact of that after sports. So I guess the competitive nature of your position and how it translates into the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, the lineman mentality is really just a lot of it is lineman is kind of a unique position where, especially offensive linemen, where besides everyone besides the center, you never touch the football. So it's like you're you're really used to just putting in your work and not expecting a whole lot of, I guess, gratitude or praise for it. It's one of those positions where you're outside of your room. There's really not a lot of acknowledgement in terms of like your success. Really, the only acknowledgement you usually get is when you don't have success, and it's like a negative thing. Where if you like give up a sack or do something wrong, it's kind of pointed out, and it's not, I guess, intended to be in a bad way, but it just like that's just kind of the nature of the position where it's like you're used to working hard and not expecting a whole lot of praise from people outside of your offensive line room and your coach. And so I think how that translates to real life, it really kind of gives you a leg up, honestly, because you're not seeking the approval from people on the outside.
Yeah, that's interesting because no one really talks about the offensive line as individuals until something goes wrong.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
So
And I
is
think
that
that,
well,
and I think
what were you
that
going to say?
I was going to say, and that's exactly how it lends to just developing that mentality is being a lineman is like I said, you just never expect any sort of recognition from anyone outside of people in your room. So
And that's very different from modeling because everyone's looking at you.
yeah, yeah, it's well, modeling, I guess sometimes it's not even about necessarily the model. It's more about how the clothes look on the model. So in a sense, you're just trying to make the clothes look as good as possible. But there definitely is the social interpersonal aspect of like how you present yourself. Are you approachable as a model? Are you energetic in a way? That definitely all plays a part into it as well.
It's almost the same kind of reward system as the offensive line because you're not being prioritized as an individual, you're being prioritized as what you can bring to the team of whatever clothing line you're helping with, you're modeling for. And then
Yeah.
it's the same as helping whatever team you're on.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, modeling does have that, like, I guess kind of inherently like the vain aspect where it's like you are judged on your looks. So it's like, how can you hold that against someone if like they're just like, you're not looking good in the clothes or whatever, which some people can take personally, but it's just like understanding, if you're hired for a job, they like the way you look in their clothes and how you would represent their brand. So I never take it personally. Like, you obviously want people you're working for and with to be satisfied and like what they're getting. So I always try to never take it personally and try to do the best I can do every time.
We were also talking about combating fat phobia.
Hmm.
and the impact that you want to have on the clothing industry, and seeing your face in their clothes will not only propel you as an individual but also their brand and awareness for big and tall people.
Yeah, like, I mean, we talked about it briefly earlier, um, or earlier briefly when we were talking about how it's a newer market. And when I joined IMG in 2019, I was like, a lot of modeling agencies didn't even have that sort of representation for guys my size. There were like two agencies doing it, and there were like 10 guys probably in the whole industry that were doing it professionally, maybe like half of them full time, where like they could pay the bills consistently. And I think there definitely needs to be more representation for the big guys, especially, you know, in these high fashion brands where it's like guys want to buy this stuff, but for whatever reason, these brands aren't marketing to them, and the clothes don't fit well. So, I think the standard for modeling and clothing can be broadened to, guys of larger stature like myself. And I would love to help market this stuff with these brands. Like I said, I'm going to a casting for Ralph Lauren. Like, that's huge. They don't shoot a lot of big men. So I think that could be big.
Is it cool to see the industry changing with you and big and tall models as a whole kind of as the catalyst?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it's when I was younger and trying to find clothes, like, it was just hard to find clothes as a big guy. So I think it's great that there's going to be more access to clothing that fits large men and looks good on them. So it's definitely an honor and a privilege to help kind of be a part of that.
And when you were going through the process of free agency and you weren't really sure if football was going to be what stuck, was
Mhm.
there any part of you that was like, I want to be a model? Like if the whole football atmosphere does not work out for me, modeling is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Oh yeah, I mean, modeling's great. um, I would say since I am so new at it, it's especially with the football taking up a large part of my time, especially when I started, it was hard to establish relationships with brands just because I wasn't working frequently due to football. Like, I was taking out a large portion of the year, and just like, I told my modeling agent, like, hey, during this time, like, I can't work. So, I mean, he obviously wasn't sending jobs my way just because, I told him, like, I'm going to be doing football, blah, blah, blah. Like, um, and so not being able to establish those relationships, it's a work in progress now. Um, and with COVID hitting and the big and tall industry, the brawn industry being relatively new, it's kind of taken a back seat to a lot of the other, I guess, categories, like the curvy models, the women, the big and tall women, and then just the other categories that sell more, honestly. So the big and tall market just kind of didn't get their share, especially this year because of COVID and companies having to prioritize, their bigger markets.
So, what kind of message do you want to send to people like you were when you were
Hmm.
looking at a young age for these clothes that fit your body type? I mean, is there a certain message that you're trying to send through your football as well as your modeling experiences?
Um, I guess my message would be that you can look good in clothes too, and that hopefully sooner rather than later, a lot of these like high fashion brands will be offering, and just brands in general will be offering more selection for guys that are my size and um, wanting to wear something outside of like Nike and Gap. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of my message.
I just think that the combination that you have going of the mechanical engineering background and the NFL experience and the modeling experience makes you such an interesting individual. Do people on the street recognize you from either of your experiences?
Oh no, I'm not Instagram famous or anything like that. So I can outside of my stature can walk through a crowd pretty easily, which I actually find kind of enjoyable, not to have to. I mean, I guess in a certain sense, you're always, whenever you're outside of the house, should be prepared to, interact with people and whatnot. But I kind of enjoy the fact that I'm not recognizable in any way, where I'm able to just kind of move about freely. But, I still understand that anytime you're outside, you're on, in a sense where it's like you have a brand to maintain and kind of present yourself a certain way.
Yeah, so on your Instagram, I think it's fun because you have a mixture of posts. You have some posts
Hmm.
of shoots that you've done, but then you also have some NFL pictures. So
Hmm.
what is there a perfect combination of posts that kind of encapsulate who you are on your feed?
That, I mean, I did that specifically just because I was kind of like, I wanted to portray that image of I'm doing both, I'm multifaceted, that kind of image. So, I try to keep it fairly even in terms of like NFL modeling. I mean, I enjoy eating and cooking, so I've been thinking about like incorporating some of that stuff into it. And then I obviously do fitness, so I mainly stick to like story posts with my fitness stuff, but maybe incorporating more fitness stuff and just like, yeah, just kind of keeping it fairly tailored, but maybe starting to incorporate more aspects of just what I do on a daily basis um, into my feed.
Yeah. And then can we talk about the combine and hurting yourself like a
Hmm.
few weeks before and the impact that that had on your mental status?
Yeah, so I was actually not injured yet by the combines. The combines in February, but like, so my senior year, I'd kind of had like a bulging disc in my back, but had gotten an epidural to kind of like take care of the inflammation and like allow me to play through the season. And then just through my training so I went to the Senior Bowl, which is kind of like an exhibition game for seniors coming out to like go to the NFL. And so I'd been training for that and then training for the combine, which is after that. And just the way I trained, I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing certain things, but did them anyway. Um, in terms of like lifting, just because I felt like, I needed it in order to um, perform well at the combine. And I think just doing that and just the wear and tear that I had kind of built up over the years playing football, and maybe the patterns of me, just my patterns of like lifting and how I moved, all just kind of added up in this unfortunate time where it all kind of came to a head. And I ended up herniating a disc in my back 2 weeks before the draft. So I'd gone through this whole process, and like, it's not like my back was like perfect before the combine or all that, or anything like that. Like, my back still, I was in pain, but like kind of played through it, I guess, in the hopes that like I could just get myself to a point where, I could obviously go to the draft and be drafted, and then obviously fix things as I could. But it was kind of one of those things where I didn't necessarily know how to fix like these patterns that you develop as an athlete, just moving a certain way and like how to correct things. But through this journey of like injuring my back and stuff, I've kind of learned how to better manage and like correct yourself and work on things that like won't necessarily be covered, or that you won't do in like a training program to prepare yourself for the combine necessarily. Like certain things you just have to do on your own and learn on your own, and kind of tailor programs to how you move as an athlete. So it's kind of a long answer.
No, I mean, that was what you went through.
Yeah. So I mean, it was unfortunate to work hard and really dedicate all that time, and then to get injured and it really impact not only where and when I was drafted, and I wasn't drafted because of it, and then to have it affect my career so much, just in terms of like the opportunities I was afforded and whatnot after that. So I mean, to say that it didn't impact my career at all wouldn't be right.
So let's talk through the teams that did have faith in you.
Mhm.
Where, because you went undrafted, who picked you up, and then what was the conversation when you then were traded to other teams?
So I got surgery in May of uh, 2017, because like my back was to the point where like my whole leg was numb and like I couldn't walk. I mean, I could walk, I couldn't run, but like I couldn't like press off my toe of my left foot. So it was like bad enough to the point where I was like, okay, like this isn't going away on its own. Like I'm gonna have to get surgery, and it's gonna be at least a 6-month recovery, because I mean nerves don't just regenerate overnight. So I think November of 2017, I signed to the practice squad of the Philadelphia Eagles. Like the moment that my agent like kind of put out the call of like, hey, like Jon Toth, remember him? He's healthy now. Like several teams contacted him and were like, one team was like, hey, we want to fly him out for the workout, blah, blah, blah. And then the Eagles were like, we just need someone. Can we sign him? So I flew out there and signed on their practice squad, and played center there. And that was kind of my first opportunity in the NFL.
Was that exciting for you? I mean, was that, even though you were going into it coming off an injury, was that
Mhm.
something that was, I guess, setting the precedent for your participation in sport down the line?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a very exciting moment. I mean, I was appreciative of the opportunity because I was like, you know, nothing is obviously guaranteed. I was very happy to finally be on a team in whatever capacity. So I felt, it was a very special opportunity to be a part of that team.
And then where did you go?
So I got released at the end of that year and signed a futures contract to come back with them the next year. So I was with them in the spring and then through week 3 of that year. So that was 2018. And then I want to say I signed with the Jets after that, like onto their practice squad. So I was with the Jets for like the last half of the year, I want to say, of 2018, and then came back with them in 2020. And I think yeah, I'm getting my dates mixed up, but I think the coaching staff was replaced with Adam Gase and company. So ended up getting released uh, from the Jets at the end of camp that following year.
And then are you still in free agency?
Yeah, I'm in free agency right now. I ended up playing in the XFL in 2020. So I was with the DC Defenders, and after that, um, that whole thing obviously was during, like, the season was in the middle of COVID. We played several games, and I played center for the Defenders, um, and the season ended abruptly, obviously because of COVID. And I had the opportunity to join the Cleveland Browns during their camp last year and participated in that for a while. And then ended up signing in December with the Detroit Lions, who I was on their practice squad and kind of played the remainder of the season with them last year. So yeah, I'm currently in free agency still.
And how is that on your mental health and your mental well-being?
I mean, to be to be a guy who's just floating around the league is, I mean, it's very stressful. It's kind of like being a model in a sense. It's like you don't know where the next opportunity is going to come from, when it's going to come. So it's definitely it's a very I guess you'd say unsteady, where you don't know when the next opportunity is going to come. And that's kind of why I've decided to explore other things and kind of broaden my horizons, because I'm like, I don't want to just be out here waiting for an opportunity forever, you know. And there's no guarantee that one's going to come along, so I'm like, why sit around and wait for something to happen when you can do something about it.
Absolutely. I mean, make your own way.
Exactly. Exactly.
So is there anything else that you want to talk about or anything that you want to plug? I mean, I can include links in the show notes of this episode once it gets published to anything that you're working on or any kind of initiatives that you want to kind of get out into the world.
um no, there's
I mean,
not necessarily.
if not, that's fine too. I just always put that out there in case anyone wants
Yeah,
to like
I mean,
advocate for anything.
anyone needs any styling help, they could hit up my girlfriend's my girlfriend's website. She has a website I can plug. It's her company's AZSN Studio, and it's www.azsn-studio.com.
I love that we're talking about you and you're like, my girlfriend has this website. Please go let her style you.
Oh yeah, I mean, she actually just revamped her website, and so I also on the side help her out with that kind of stuff. So
You have a lot on your plate.
yeah, so it's important obviously to have a good schedule and be consistent, and kind of split my time appropriately. So
And is there anything else as we're winding down that you think that I missed talking about or that you would like to talk about more? I mean, are there any questions that you would like to talk about that you don't think we have yet?
no, I think
Okay.
I'm good.
Awesome. And then I'll just email you once this episode is out. And
Cool. Yeah, I can definitely post all the links and stuff, and
awesome.
a clip or something if you have
Yeah.
that, and repost
I'm
it on my
I'm
stuff.
working on my social media right now, so there will be like a couple posts that will include you. So
Hmm.
I'll just like tag you in them and
Yeah, and I
then
can repost them
yeah. And then
for
can I
sure.
also get like a good picture of you for those posts? Just like either a
Yeah.
headshot or you doing something?
Oh yeah, I have lots of good photos I can send
Awesome.
from modeling.
Well, have a great rest of your day, and I'll email you the link once this episode goes public.
Thanks. Sounds good, Julia. Appreciate the interview.
Bye.
Bye.